Hi, friends. This is really important stuff. Like I said, I grew up in a strict religious Christian household. I have RTS, religious trauma syndrome, which still affects me to this day. Not as bad, of course. I've gotten over a lot of it, but it still has some lingering effects. Religion is extremely damaging when it's taken the way that the church presents it as. And so we're going to be taking a look at the experiences of a pastor who was forbidden to tell his church certain truths, and we're going to see exactly what these truths are. What is being hidden from the church, what is being hidden from you, and what is being hidden from the world. This is important stuff. So let's start right away, and I want to show you guys that I am going to be reading some excerpts from an article on medium.com, and let me bring it up so that you can see it. This is by Shengta Tsai. Hopefully I'm saying that right, Shengta Tsai. And the title is, As a Youth Pastor, I Was Forbidden to Share the Truth About the Christian Faith. So we're going to be looking at what happened here to, I'm just going to say Tsai, and what experiences a pastor had in being barred from talking about these aspects of religion and Christianity. So just FYI, I'm going to be reading some quotes from this article. If you like it, if you enjoy the article, go over to medium.com and give Shengta Tsai a follow. I don't know much about him, but from reading this article, I like him a lot. So let's see some of what this individual said. So Tsai starts off by saying, for over a year, I've been thinking about writing on this topic, but I kept putting it off because I was worried that people would dismiss my experiences as rare, even though I know that they're common. So he's been wanting to write about this for a while. He's been wanting to talk about this. He's been wanting to divulge this. Been sort of eating away at him. He wants to get it out, but he's afraid that people are going to think, oh, this doesn't really happen often. It was just you. But he knows that this is a very common experience. And Laura in the chat told me that she had a very common experience when she went to Bible college, and it was a class on ethics in Bible college, she said. And I forget exactly what her professor told her, but something along the lines of, sometimes you have to lie to your congregation. And Laura, of course, did not like that at all, as one wouldn't. It's quite eye-opening to see how much corruption exists within the church. So let's continue here to see what Tsai has to say. Tsai says, recently, I watched a YouTube video with snippets of interviews featuring Bible scholars. They pointed out that pastors often pick and choose what they share with their congregations. And yeah, this is absolutely true. But this goes beyond. I think most of us know that people who subscribe to religion often pick and choose. They pick and choose what verses to believe in and which ones to disregard. But this goes beyond just cherry-picking verses in the Bible, what we're talking about here. Tsai says, why is that? How come they don't tell their congregation the whole truth? Why do they pick and choose? If what pastors learn in seminary is solid and backed by academia, why can't they freely share it with their congregation? And this is a very good point. And we're going to see that really religion has nothing to do with truth. It's all about dogma and listening to authority and control. It's about dogma, fear, control. It's a control mechanism. It has nothing to do with truth. In fact, it's anti-truth. It's the opposite of truth. It's blinders. It's propaganda to keep you in line, keep people in line as sheep in a flock to be herded around and fleeced. Now, Tsai says, according to the Bible scholars in the video, it's because some of these facts don't exactly fit with what many Christians already believe. And many pastors are afraid that if they start shaking things up too much, they risk shaking people's faith in Jesus. Quote, they don't need to know that. So essentially what they're saying here is that they pick and choose what to tell their congregation because certain truths don't align with what people believe in, and they're afraid that these truths will jeopardize their faith. And this goes to show you how religion is not about truth. Religion is about belief and control. So, Sai continues, back when I was in seminary studying pastoral theology, it was a common refrain from our lecturers, many of whom were pastors themselves, quote, be careful what you share with your congregation. That's what his lecturers in his classes would say. They stress the importance of considering the varying levels of spiritual maturity among Christians and cautioned us against rocking the boat with new or challenging ideas. The fear was that if we exposed our flock to information that didn't align with their current beliefs, we could cause them to stumble in their faith. Well, then they probably should stumble in their faith. If a certain truth will cause one to realize that, hey, maybe something is not right here, maybe the way that I'm thinking is flawed, maybe I am believing in a lie, truth is what should be the goal, not just belief for the sake of belief. Now, by the way, I want to mention that this sort of idea here is not just restricted to mainstream religion, but I have seen this play out a lot in like esoteric or occult societies that have a very similar sort of thought process. Not exactly the same, but this idea of, oh, well, we have to be careful with, you know, what information we share, and that's why they have like different degrees and different levels and things like that. Now, not all these systems are bad. I'm not saying that, but there are, you know, just like there are some religions that are progressive. There are some churches that are very, very progressive. Now, in my opinion, it's very rare. Most are not, but there are some genuinely very progressive churches out there. Just like I think there are some genuinely very progressive societies or orders possibly out there. But I just want to make a point that this isn't restricted to just religion in general. I have also seen this play out in occult and esoterica. So just be careful is what I'm saying. Just be careful. Don't think, oh, just because I'm not involved in religion, I'm safe. Because if you be careful of anything that you're involved in, always question, always use logic and reason, and always have your mind on truth, not being influenced by, you know, the culture or the congregation or the community or whatever. It's always about truth in your growth, in your understanding, and our collective growth and our collective understanding. So that's very important. So Sai continues by saying, I couldn't wrap my head around the idea of avoiding uncomfortable truths about the Bible for fear of causing people to stumble. It seemed to me like we were prioritizing comfort over growth. And that's exactly right. And it's not just comfort over growth, but it's also very damaging as well, because if you believe in lies, then you're going to believe in things that are harmful to society. For example, like thinking that same-sex marriage is a sin or something like this. It's not only, you know, providing the fact that this is not a sin, that there's nothing wrong with this, that it's a perfectly acceptable lifestyle as much as anyone else, perfectly acceptable, perfectly acceptable relationship as much as any other kind of relationship. But challenging this will cause people to question their faith, and we'll see. Well, but let's continue here. I want to say more about this before we get into that. So he says, wasn't the role of a pastor supposed to be about guiding and challenging our understanding of the Bible and Christianity rather than just keeping everyone in their comfort zones? So you see, I really like Tsai's mentality and his mindset. I like it. I don't know a lot about him. I just know him from this article. But so far, I really like the way he's thinking, because he's thinking, well, as a pastor, aren't I supposed to help people understand the Bible and challenge their understanding of the Bible and Christianity and help them grow and learn and have a more full understanding of things rather than just keeping everyone in their comfort zones? And I think that's exactly how it should be. I wish that we had more. Religion wouldn't be as big of a problem as it is now if pastors had the mindset that Tsai has, where today pastors are simply about, it's just repetition and conditioning and control. If you ever go to church, it's just the same thing over, love Jesus, follow Jesus, don't sin, list of rights and wrongs, etc. It's nothing about delving into the the underlying truths that these religions symbolically represent. It's never about that. It's always about the fundamentalist interpretation, just keeping people in a mindset of control. And I really like he put up this video here. Actually, I don't know their gender, so I'm just going to say they. But Tsai put up this in their article, I'll show you, of a pastor, if you can see it on screen, or priest rather, with a bunch of sheep in the congregation. And it's exactly like that. And it shouldn't be like that. It should be about freeing individuals. So Tsai continues by saying, as you can imagine, I got into trouble for not following this golden rule more than once. So Tsai was told that there are certain things that he should avoid. He shouldn't rock the boat. He shouldn't expose the congregation to things that could challenge their faith. And he got in trouble for doing exactly that, rocking the boat. And good for him. So he says, during my life or my time in pastoral ministry, I made it a point to share all the insights I had about the Bible with my congregation. My aim wasn't to stir up discomfort, but rather to help them understand it better. And I love that. I think that that's amazing. So what kind of things? So they pointed out, he says, I discussed things like how certain passages weren't found in the earliest manuscripts. So in the earliest manuscripts of the Bible, there are certain passages that aren't found in there, meaning they were added later. And of course, this jeopardizes people's faith, because especially the kind of Christianity that I grew up in, we were taught that the Bible was the perfect, inerrant, inspired word of God. And so having things added later would, of course, really jeopardize that narrative. So one of the things is how certain passages in the Bible aren't found in the earliest manuscripts. Another one is, quote, Tsai says, how the stories in Genesis 1 through 3 bear similarities to myths from the ancient Near East, urging caution against taking them too literally. I love that. So I really like this individual so far. So Tsai is saying that another one of the things that he discussed was that how the story of creation, Genesis 1 to 3, has a lot of similarities to Eastern mythology. And so he would say, hey, look at these similarities. It's important not to take these stories too literally. Because that's essentially the idea. These stories are similar. And this is why are these stories similar? Because we live in a reality where we share a unified archetypal pattern. Reality is a certain way. And so because reality is a certain way, we all have these intuitions about how existence is. And so even though people may live on different areas, opposite sides of the globe, they will create similar mythologies because they follow a similar pattern. It's kind of like how, if you look at Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and The Matrix, they're very different, but they all have extremely similar aspects to them. You know, in Star Wars, you have Gandalf, who helps guide Frodo, and in Lord of the Rings, you have Gandalf, who helps guide Frodo. In Star Wars, you have Obi-Wan, who helps guide Luke Skywalker. You see these commonalities. So they're different stories, but share commonalities. So same things happen in ancient mythology. And basically what Sai would urge his congregation, or their congregation, is not to take these things too literally, because look at the similarities that they share. Should have a more metaphorical or allegorical interpretation. Sai continues by saying, I even talked about the deceptive claims of some so-called Christian archaeologists who touted finding Noah's Ark, encouraging my parishioners to think critically. So there are people out there, there are Christian archaeologists out there who go, oh, we found Noah's Ark, here it is. And of course, they didn't. And so he would challenge this and try and get his congregation to think in a critical way. But whenever I brought up these topics, I faced resistance from the church leadership. So every time he wanted to talk about these things, whenever he was trying to bring this up and talk about this, the truths with his congregation, he faced resistance. He says, honestly, I was puzzled when this happened. Wasn't it important to challenge misconceptions about the Bible? Wasn't this part of my role as a pastor? See, Sai has a great mindset. That should be the role of a pastor. Unfortunately, it's not. The role of a pastor is to brainwash people and condition people and keep people in line and believing the same thing. They continue by saying, as part of my duties, I was tasked with leading one of the Alpha Course groups. On one occasion, and this is really interesting, I love this. Look at this. On one occasion, the topic was the trilemma popularized by C.S. Lewis. The gist of it is that Jesus, who claimed to be God, could only be one of three things: either a liar, a lunatic, or exactly who he claimed to be, God. The argument goes like this. Since it's unlikely that a liar or a lunatic could have sparked such a massive following and enduring religious movement, Jesus must be telling the truth. So we're going to look at that. First of all, that's awful. That's an awful argument. That's a terrible argument. You can look at many people in history who are liars and lunatics who have sparked a massive and enduring following. So that first of all, that's a terrible thing to terrible use of logic there. But let's see what Sai has to say. Sai said, now, this was the angle I was supposed to present. This is what he was supposed to present. This is what he was supposed to teach. But I wanted to foster an honest and balanced discussion. So I presented the fourth possibility that I learned from my seminary studies: legend. So this fourth possibility that he learned when he was studying to become a pastor was the idea of legend. And so he wanted to share this. Sai says, basically it's the idea that maybe some of the passages in the Gospels about Jesus claiming to be God is more like a legend than a historical fact. But I made sure to emphasize that this option isn't very likely because the Gospel accounts are pretty solid and trustworthy. So I liked Sai. Sai, I wish we had more people like Sai. So Sai believes that these things really happened, but he's being honest. He's presenting the possibility, hey, you know what? This could all be a legend. This could all be mythology. And it's true. It could. Now, my personal opinion is I believe that Jesus Christ really existed and was a historical individual. I don't believe that his name was Jesus, and I do not believe that he did any of the miracles ascribed to him. I believe that he was likely a highly enlightened individual who understood intuitively that reality was a unity and that we are fragments of the one experiencing itself. And so I believe he wanted to help people learn to treat each other with kindness and live in a more unified way. That's what I believe. And then his message was sensationalized and twisted and completely altered into what we have today. Do I know that that's true? No, I don't know that's true, but that's what I believe. I think that there is good evidence that that an individual like this existed, but he did not do any of those miracles or anything like that. But I love that Tsai is presenting this information in a rational and logical way. Hey, this is a possibility. This is an option. Tsai continues by saying, during that discussion, my supervisor, who was also there, stayed quiet the whole time. So he had a supervisor watching him. He was quiet the whole time. But once the meeting wrapped up, he pulled me aside and scolded me for bringing up the fourth option, the possibility that it could be a legend. Quote, they did not need to know that. Why did you have to complicate the issue? Just stick to the curriculum. So, you can understand here that Tsai was probably very confused. Tsai thought that his role was to present the Bible in the most accurate and truthful way possible. But that's not the case. As a pastor, the job is to present the Bible in a way that people are comfortable with and familiar with, and that maximizes control. So, I'm going to skip a little bit, quite a bit here. If you want to know more about what Tsai said, go read his article. But I'm skipping a big chunk where he talks about they brought in a petition to sign a petition against same-sex marriage and how he didn't want to sign it, but he was pressured, and there's the risk of him losing his job, losing his position. There's a lot of really good information in there. So go check out the article if you want to read the rest of that, but I'm going to skip quite a bit here. So Tsai says, I used to believe that the seminary I attended was quite open-minded. We had professors and guest speakers with diverse theological perspectives, some fully supportive of LGBTQ rights. However, shortly after I graduated, the Board of Governors imposed a new rule. They required all faculty members and senior administrators to sign a moral vision statement affirming that marriage is strictly between a man and a woman. Those who refused to sign were barred from teaching or working on campus. Talk about censorship. Apparently, even seminary students were deemed too fragile to handle alternative viewpoints. And this is something that I do try to get across to people, is that one has to be very, very careful, because if you go to church, like the types of churches that I went to, they may seem very accepting. You may be a member of the LGBTQ community or whatever, and they might seem very accepting. Oh, yeah, come on in. We love you just the way you are. You're great, and we're accepting, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's what it may be like for a little while, but after you start getting deeply involved, then it starts coming out, you know what? Hey, I just wanted to tell you that, you really are living in sin, and if you pray to Jesus, Jesus will give you the strength to walk away from the sinful path that you're on. And then a lot of pressure will happen, and a lot of mind games will happen. And, I know this because I grew up in a Christian household, and I went to these different churches, and I had this sort of, behind the scenes experience of like, oh yeah, make sure that you're accepting to these people, but they are living in sin, and, it's not acceptable, etc. So I believe that there are some genuine progressive churches out there, and people like Tsai. I like Tsai a lot. But the experiences that I have had, and a lot of religious institutions out there, you have to be careful because they'll seem like the nicest people and bake you cookies and say you're accepted all day long. But then when you turn away for a second, they're going to get a bill passed that takes your rights away. And you can see that happening right now all around us. So, Sai says, it took me a long time to grasp that Christianity wasn't primarily about seeking truth, but rather about controlling the narrative. It's exactly what we've been saying. It's not about truth, it's about control. Christianity wasn't primarily about seeking truth, but rather controlling the narrative and ensuring conformity among Christians. Conformity, control, fear. Once I recognized that I didn't belong in that environment, I made the decision to leave. I liked Sai a lot. I wish that we had more people with his perspective involved in religion. Because imagine all the atrocities that are occurring in the world that are based fundamentally and rooted in religion would begin to melt away. Because when you have the understanding that, hey, there's a lot of similarities between myths and maybe we shouldn't take things so literally, that's when you begin to realize that everything is founded on an underlying truth. It's just expressed in a variety of ways. And so these very ideas that are being barred from congregations, that's barred from church, that pastors are being told not to talk about, are exactly the things that would unite us. We need to get people to realize that religion is an expression. It's an archetypal expression. It is a mythological expression. And underneath it all religions share the same root. All religions share the same framework, but it gets expressed in mythology in various ways. And when it's taken as fundamentally true, then you have people who end up going to war with each other because they believe in the supremacy of their God or their religion, etc. So I applaud Sai for being true to their values, and I would like to see many more people like this individual be involved in transforming religion. So I don't know what Sai is doing right now. I don't know what Sai's beliefs are right now, but I would love for Sai to help create a more progressive understanding of Christianity, a more true understanding of Christianity, so that people can have an alternative that is more closely aligned with the truth, and so that we can all become aligned with each other and the world. So, I hope you enjoyed this, my friends. This is really important stuff. Like, honestly, this is one